Today we're going to talk about best available techniques and best environmental practices as they are presented in this guidance document. The presentation I will be doing today was not prepared originally by the Secretariat. Secretariat just made some slight changes. The original author was Mr. Stefan Posner, who is also one of the drafters of this guidance document. So, to start, I'd like to share with you the chemistry of PFOS. This slide is showing the diagram on the electrochemical fluorination process, and you can see from the very beginning of the process up to the end and the different uses PFOS can have from the different processes coming through this initial overview that you have in front of you. Best available techniques and best environmental practices, in short. What does this terminology mean? That is something we will be talking about during the presentation. Then there are some issues to consider that pertain as well to daily activities. But most important is to those particular sectors that are still using or producing PFOS, including the waste sector. So, what is the scope of the guidance document, and what is the scope of this BAT and BEP? As you know, those of you that are parties or are more knowledgeable of the Stockholm Convention, Article 3 within the text of the Convention, this article requests parties that have specific exemptions or acceptable purposes to take measures to ensure that any production or use of such exemptions or purposes are carried out in a manner that really helps preventing or minimizing human exposures and releases to the environment. So the guidance document that we will be walking through today has been developed to assist or to guide parties in addressing the risks of this perfluorooctane sulfonic acid and its related substances. Furthermore, not only in the text of the convention, but also when the chemical was listed, when PFOS, its source, and PFOS-F was listed, in part 3 of Annex B, issues related to the production and use, taking into consideration appropriate guidance like BAT and BEP are to be considered. So the concept here of best available technique is not really aiming at prescribing any specific technique or technology, but BAT means most effective and advanced technique available, in addition to the practical suitability of this particular technique within the different national contexts. Best environmental practices describe applications of the most appropriate combination of measures or strategies as per, for example, in Article 5 of the Stockholm Convention. So what we are going to walk you through today relates to these main concepts, and would like you to remember this part. So the guidance document is structured in 5 main chapters, where the first chapter is dealing or outlines the purpose and structure of the document and includes a brief description of the characteristics and uses of PFOS that are directly relevant to the provisions of the Stockholm Convention, and a summary of the required measures under these provisions. Chapter 2 relates to a description of the processes in which PFOS is being used and guidance on some potential alternative or substitute alternative processes or substitutes. Chapter 3 includes a general guidance with certain applicable principles and descriptions and some cross-cutting multiple processes category. And Chapter 5 relates to or tries to provide general guidance on BEP for the management of PFOS. So what is PFOS, or what really is covered within Stockholm Convention. As most of you present today and listening today know, PFOS is a fully fluorinated anionic substance, which is most commonly used as a salt in some applications incorporated into large polymers. PFOS and its closely related compounds, which might contain PFOS impurities or substances that can result in PFOS, are members of a large family, PFA substances, perfluoroalkyl sulfonates. PFOS was listed because it contains it has all the properties of a persistent organic pollutant, so it's very persistent and has substantial bioaccumulations and biomagnifying properties. It is interesting to mention here that it follows a different pattern. The first POPs, the 12 initial POPs, were more related to fatty tissues. They were bound to fatty tissues, but PFOS instead is more inclined to proteins, and therefore certain organs within the human body, for example, might be affected, as the liver, for example. So PFOS also has the capacity of long-range transport, and most important issue is that it unfortunately fulfills all the toxic criteria on the Stockholm Convention, and that is why it was listed. What are some of the uses of PFOS? PFOS, as I mentioned before, is used or has been used in a wide range of products where PFOS is both produced with intention, or it happens to degrade. PFOS can be formed by degradation from large groups of related substances, which in this guidance, as well as in the guidance to make inventory, is referred as PFOS-related substances, and is, as I said before, a member of a larger family. Some of the uses of PFOS are mentioned here in this slide. I will highlight some of them, like pesticides for certain bait leaf-cutting ants, firefighting foams, for example, and semiconductor and photographic industry. Those uses here are part of those that Stockholm Convention is still allowed, but I will go into more details after a little. Within the Stockholm Convention, PFOS is still allowed to be produced, and it happens that it is still being produced in several countries. The listing, and this is something very important, those categories that are not listed in the convention are completely banned. An example is cosmetics. Of that, cosmetics, if PFOS is being used, is something that parties need to stop from happening. But the listing or non-listing of the uses for acceptable purposes or specific exemptions in the convention is included in the convention and its obligations. Alternatives to PFOS are available for certain applications, but actually maybe not in developing countries, but they still need to face in the world in general still needs to face in certain alternatives to PFOS. There are other applications like photoimaging or semiconductors that are considered to be as acceptable purposes because the knowledge today implies that there are no technically feasible alternatives to the use of PFOS. Or at least they are not commercially available today. As you might know, Stockholm Convention listed PFOS with acceptable purposes, and these acceptable purposes that are listed here are those uses or where PFOS can still be produced for, where there is no specific time limit. So, for example, for photoimaging, PFOS can still be produced and used, and there is no specific target. There is a difference with specific exemption. A specific exemption, according to the text of the convention, has a time frame, and that time frame is 5 years. Some of the applications are also listed here. And to mention, you have metal plating, for example, chemically driven oil production, for coating and impregnation processes such as carpets, leather and apparel, paper and packaging. So for all these acceptable purposes and specific exemptions, BAT and BEP guidance is trying to address how to use it in the best possible way according to the convention. To start with one acceptable purpose, firefighting foams. I'd like to indicate before introducing this theme is that firefighting foams are widely used all over the world, and many countries have requested for specific exemptions in relation to firefighting foams, some of them with a specific date to finish. But what are firefighting foams? So aqueous film foam, forming foams, sometimes are referred to as aqueous firefighting foam, and this is still a generic term for firefighting or vapor suppression products used globally to protect both life and property. The acronym used for this is AFFF. So AFF are unique among other firefighting foams in the way that they contain a small percentage of fluorinated surfactants, fluorosurfactants, and these key ingredients give or brings unique performance attributes to the product, which in fact enables it to be extremely effective in preventing and extinguishing fires, especially Class B flammable liquid events. AFFF products can be used in fixed or unportable systems, for example, sprinkler systems, handheld fire extinguishers, portable cylinders, firefighting vehicles, for example, the trucks that firemen or fire brigades use. In most situations, AFFF are purchased as a concentrate, and typically it is either 3 or 6%, depending on the mixture ratio when being used, and the mixture is formed together with water. So for firefighting foams, as little mentioned before, foams have been developed in two main classes, classes A that are solid combustible, and classes B that are flammable liquid fires. In the case of class B foams, there are two major categories: synthetic foams and protein foams. So what can be considered or can be something or an action that is considered best environmental practices? In this case, the choice of a foam to be used in any specific situation needs to be carefully made, taking into consideration numerous factors. For example, fire protection experts clearly need to have a lead role in making this decision. So when evaluating a foam for the use in preventing a fire, several factors need to be considered, and here you have some questions. It's, for example, is any type of foam actually needed? For example, in a Class A incident, it might not be necessary to use any foam to control the situation. But if a foam needs to be used, does it need to be Class B foam? While Class B foams might be quite more effective on Class A fires, other techniques might be equally useful and maybe most appropriate. Some other questions are like, if class B flammable liquid situation presents itself, which type of class B foam would be most appropriate to be used? And these are the type of questions there. This is, of course, extremely related to the potential of having alternatives or substitutes to these firefighting foams. And how is this related to other issues before? Now parties are requested to make inventory. So in the case of those that are developing at this moment the national implementation plan, the inventory review and identification of which chemicals are being used is essential. The other is to really train those using the foams, testing fire protection systems, evaluating or the sprinkler system, preventing maintenance, and also issues related to unintended releases are important to be considered, and waste management situations as well. It is important to mention here that the POPs Review Committee is working on guidance for alternatives of PFOS in open applications. Firefighting foams was one identified as such, and alternatives are already available that are socially and economically feasible to use. So those are the type of questions that are closely related to BAT or BEP measures for these chemicals and for this particular use. Electroplating. Electroplating is another use of PFOS. PFOS is useful as a surfactant or weighting agent in this industry to achieve uniform thickness of the plating or uniform chemical attack. It also serves as a mist suppressing agent, so as not to contaminate nearby baths or to reduce the losses by drag out. That's some part of the use. In this, there are some categories: hard metal plating with chromium 6, or decorative electroplating with chromium 6 or chromium 3. As indicated, PFOS is very useful as wetting agent here, and though PFOS was previously used for decorative chrome plating, now there are new technologies that are using chrome 3 instead of chrome 6 that has made the use of PFOS in decorative chrome plating in most cases obsolete. In the case of hard chrome plating, the use of chromium 3 does not work apparently. So there are some kinds of non-PFOS agents being used in decorative electroplating and some hard chrome plating as well. There are some emerging alternatives for decorative chromium plating, but for hard chromium there are no available substitutes or alternatives, at least in the European market at this moment. BAT and BEP measures for electroplating. Here you can also see 5 potential ways of addressing electroplating. One of them relates to changing technology using chromium 3 instead of chromium 6, applying closed loop systems, for example, substituting PFOS mist suppressing agent with available non-PFOS agents, for example, providing additional ventilation or greater tank enclosure to reduce exposure of chromium 6, and of course, as usual, last but not least, the collection and disposal of the waste from these processes really needs to be done in an environmentally sound manner. Insecticides. In the case of insecticides, also this is something that was identified in the Stockholm Convention as an acceptable purpose and a specific exemption. It has entries in both. And in this case, the sulfuramide, also called sulfluramide, is both a surfactant and a pesticide used against termites, cockroaches, and ants. In addition to this function as insecticide, fluorosurfactants might also be used as inert surfactants or enhancers in pesticide products. The two PFOS-related substances that are mentioned there have been approved in pesticides formulations, for example, in the United States. And both chemicals have other uses, for example, as cleaning agents. PFOS derivatives were used in pesticides because they were considered rather inert and not toxic to humans. So some measures, BAT and BEP measures for insecticides. The best environmental practice for ant application uses no releases. Although that uses no releases mechanism, that includes to apply the bait in a direct manner that aims at not only rationalizing the use of the granulated bait, but also at monitoring systems. The development and application of tools in companies can present more specific features due to regional conditions, but it is generally consists of actions as the ones described here. One relates to really knowing the infestation areas, estimating the real consumption, qualifying and training periodically those people that are using these chemicals, elaborating databases, for example, and having some health and safety considerations. Before going to the next slide, just to make a note, the only country that has registered for a specific exemption for sulfuramide is Brazil, and Brazil is using this active ingredient in the manufacturing of ant baits for the control of leaf-cutting ants, belonging to certain species, which are insects that really cause damage to agriculture sector on their country. Currently, this active ingredient registered in Brazil for producing baits to control leaf-cutting ants are sulfuramide, fipronil as well, and chlorpyrifos. The two later mentioned are considered more acute toxic to humans and environment than sulfuramide. Furthermore, the effectiveness of these substances has been questioned. Thus, new alternatives are being studied thoroughly in Brazil. The sulfuramide cannot currently be efficiently replaced in this country, so the register completely applies for them. Sulfuramide is the only active ingredient with all the properties necessary for the effective functioning of ant bait, which makes it the only effective option for controlling leaf-cutting ants according to this country. So, going into another use, coating and impregnation items, carpet, leather, apparel, textiles, and upholstery, as well as paper and packaging. Fluorinated compounds finishes are the only technology known to deliver both the durability and effective oil and water repellent and releases properties. Historically, these fluorinated polymers based on PFOS, electromechanical fluorination chemistry, have been used up to 2% weight and could be present in the products. In addition, fluorotelomere-based polymers have also been used. So major manufacturers, in conjunction with global regulators, have agreed to discontinue the manufacture of long-chain fluorinated products, such as PFOS-related chemicals, and move to short-chain fluorinated products. These new short chain products are currently defined as being best available technology, but this still needs to pass through different processes and really verify they are harmless. So some of the BAT and BEP for coating and impregnation items are described here. And as usual, the minimization of use or the substitution is essential. For example, the use new CC polymers from telomerization and C4 products from electrophorination that cannot break down into PFOA or PFOS are alternatives that are feasible and technically acceptable. Also, concepts of minimization and optimization of the chemicals, like avoiding the surplus on NSF, avoid cross-linking agents that help with the film formation. Use the cross-linking agents that help with the film formation. Use extenders with the ability of improving the self-organization of the FC polymers, and if possible, avoid sprayed applications are examples of the examples given through the guidance. For the electronic industry, in this sense, electrical and electronic equipment requires a lot of parts, thousands of parts, thousands of processes. PFOS-based chemicals are used in the manufacturing of digital cameras, for example, printers, satellite communication systems, and some other product systems. PFOS-related compounds are processed chemically, and the final products are usually PFOS-free. PFOS have many uses in the electronic industry and is involved in a large part of the production processes needed for certain parts, such as the semiconductors and the photographic industry. So some of the potential measures, BAT and BEP measures for this semiconductor industry are described here, and it should be implemented with a safe handling of PFOS and include controlled storage, refill, and transport. And some of these things are related to measures, equipment that uses PFOS, inspection of containers or equipment that are used for the handling of PFOS, recording and retaining of books about PFOS. Photographic industry, surfactants in this industry are used in coatings and static dischargers, adhesion control for analog and digital imaging film, papers, printing plates, PFOS and its related chemicals are used for the purposes described in the slide here. So as surfactants, as friction control agents, dirt repellent agents, among others. Here you also have some measures for the photographic industry that can be things to consider when planning if you have these sectors within your country. And this is, for the time being, the presentation today.